Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our six fans here on the Who is the Mole Season 5 recaps. I'm still Jamie,
And I'm still Spencer.
and it's lovely to have you all.
Back
Um,
very shortly. This was a quick round for us. It's only been like 4 days, question mark, 3.
yeah, in fairness, we thought it was going to be probably a day longer. That just did not come to fruition because of how the assignment went, but we'll get
Yeah.
there. Um, but yeah, we're just going to recap some of the things that have happened in the game from, the start of the round through the assignment, through a twist that we had at the end, and just our candid thoughts throughout.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So first up what we had is a kind of our fault, I guess. It's the new disaster that is turning. Well, jury's still. I haven't made a full opinion yet on what I think of the treasure twist. There's still strengths to it, but this group is very stressful when it comes to the treasure. I'm not exactly sure why. So we had to take like a 12-hour period and just be like, if you want a new treasure, just tell us who the new treasure is by like in a 12-hour deadline, pretty much. And
And again, what's funny about that is like we never set a parameter of like you need to vote on it. It must be or like it must be a voted for thing or it must be a unanimous thing. Like that's nothing we said. We just said tag us with if there's a treasure or change.
like this is meant like this is not an important part of the game that much. Like this is it's just like we just need somebody. And like for my expectations coming into this, I kind of thought that it would be like on the show. If you ever watch the show, they'll have like 3 treasures, 4 at most. Like it's very uncommon to ever have more than 4 treasures. It's kind of like one person gets picked as the treasure and that person will be the treasurer until they're eliminated, or if they ever do something that's like super shady and the group's like, oh no, we need to give it to somebody else. So usually the treasurer lasts for multiple rounds, but this group's like, oh no, we need to change it every single round. So now, and David in particular is very strong by like, oh, we need to do a vote for this. We've got to really vote. And he's on top of everyone, like, oh, you need to vote in this poll that I made so we can decide who the treasurer is. And it's just a lot more work than I'd be willing to put into it, I guess.
Yeah, it's a small thing kind of in the grand scheme of the season, but I don't think that the players fully realize that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe over time. Or maybe like the whole game will just continue like that treasure's still getting information, even though like we'll get to a point where like almost everyone has been the treasurer, but there'll still be like this aura around it.
Yeah, that seems to be the conception in the game for the people who haven't been well, not really like along just upon a select few is that like the treasure is just getting this dearth of information that nobody else is giving. We're just like telling the treasure all of this sort of information about the whole game that only they get to know, and it's like, no, not really, but
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
sure, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, especially in this assignment where it's pretty clear how much had been won, you know, and that's all the treasurer was told was how much they won. But the
Yeah.
team could have done that math themselves.
2 assignments in a row like that.
Yes.
And well, I don't know for the next one. We'll see for like the next one of them will be very transparent about how much the group earns, but for your assignment, I'm not. We'll figure that out when we get there,
Yeah,
I guess.
probably mine as well, just based on like giving them some information for the quiz. Yeah.
So then I guess we can get to the one assignment we have this round. What an assignment it was.
Yeah, it's actually a returning test from last season. So, I think we said this in our first video, but this season Spencer and I each created like an equal number of new tests, and then we each brought back a handful of tests that we had used in previous seasons at some point in the series. So this is another one of our returning tests.
Yeah, so it was Codenames, which we did tweak it slightly because like although it did end in disaster for the first time that we did it in All Stars, it was the group was earning a little too much money for our liking. It just seemed a bit too on the easy side, so we did try to make it just a slightly bit difficult, even though I still expected the assignment to be like a money earner. Like it still isn't, we didn't make it that much more complicated. We just made it a bit harder to earn like the full amount that it could be worth, but we didn't make it meaningfully harder. So we added like a few extra words to it because normally it's like 25 words. We made it 30 for this one.
Yeah. And could you explain just how it functions for anyone who doesn't know
Oh
Codenames?
yeah, so you have
Spencer's a board game aficionado, so he's the perfect person for this.
all of my tasks are just stolen from board games, in case you haven't figured that one out yet.
Inspired by.
Distilled from.
Don't get us canceled.
I mean, I do tweak them. The rules are changed a bit for the most part. It's I don't think any of them are like a straight like carbon copy of it, but like because like in Codenames, like it's team v team, but like we switch it so there's 2 clue givers, and then everyone else is working together to answer those clues or to like solve kind of like the clues that are given. So there's a big grid of words, and the clue givers can give a 1-word clue to let's see, it's like 10 of the words are divided into red words, 10 are blue words, and then 9 are white words, and then 1 was a black word. So it goes back and forth between a red turn and a blue turn, where the red spy master will give a 1-word clue to try to hint at as many red words as possible. So for example, they could say party, and they also give a number of how many clues they're trying to hint at. So party 2. So they're trying to hint at 2 words that are relevant to the word party that the group can then figure out. So then the group then has to go onto like the thread and then just answer one at a time, like the words that they think are being hinted at, and they can guess up to the number of words. This is a different from the game. In the game, and what we did the first time is that they could do the number hinted at plus 1, and this one we just limited that to the exact number.
Yeah. And again, we tweaked the rules a little bit from the actual board game to make it more challenging to win money, make it more of an assignment.
And a thing we'll allude to later, very clearly written in the rules that like the example, I gave an example of like, I think was the same thing, party 2, and I said, so that means the group can guess up to 2 words, very explicit language used in the rules. Still people not reading, we're going to complain about that later, but that's fine. And so yeah, like it is a very simple assignment though. And it did kind of start simple for the group, but there were some interesting takes that the group had. It didn't turn out super well, actually. Jamie, could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so our spy masters, who were the ones who gave clues, that was Brian and Alex. And so one gave red clues, the other one gave blue clues, and blues clues. That's funny. And yeah, it started off pretty well. I'm trying to remember what the specific clues were. I think the first one was Normandy. So like the answers that Brian was going for were France and
soldier,
and,
yeah, and death. Yeah, it was so 3, but
well with that, that was a good one to start with. And then Alex's went well too. I believe Amanda answered first actually. So, and that's interesting because as you all viewers know now, Amanda is the mole. So he gave a clue that the clue was, I want to say Jesus, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was hinting at nail and cross.
Yes. So there was even talk in the group that he might be hinting at cross and nail. And Amanda even thought that, but she decided to just go for one answer and then lock in her turn without guessing the other one. So that cost the group a little bit of money. But still, they were doing pretty well. By round 2 of clues, though, things started to change a little bit. So interestingly, I think it comes down to what was happening in the Spy Master chat with Brian and Alex. And what's funny there is that going into this, I think it's pretty safe to say that Alex very much suspected Brian as being the mole. And at the time, Brian very much suspected Alex as being the mole. So there was some like kind of weird positioning that was happening, or some like testing each other out to see kind of who would do something shady, to, confirm or get rid of those suspicions, right?
Yeah. And so it came up with Brian, I think, had originally suggested that like, you should give swim as a clue.
When Brian himself thought that was a bad idea, because the bad word, the word that they're not supposed to say, was scuba diver.
Yeah, because that's the one black word, and if someone had guessed that word, the assignment immediately ended, and whatever money that they had earned would be cut in half.
Like Brian was a little shady to suggest that, but Alex was a little shady to just go along with it. It also did not help that Alex had been having some adult beverages during the task, so I think that played a role too. But it was just really funny to like observe the two of them both thinking that it's each other and just like playing into this like dual shadiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was the whole disaster of this challenge mainly comes from the fact that like, so Brian suggests that to Alex. Alex goes along with it, so he just posts clue swim, but he doesn't post the number with it. So the group just kind of like starts freaking out a bit and really like discussing swim as like a clue and what that could possibly mean, but they aren't ever able to make a guess on it because it doesn't have a number by it, so they don't know how many words that they should be trying to think of with that.
So it took a long while to get that. But what was funny though is that in that chat still, like they had multiple ideas of what it could be, but the very first one that they had came up with was, oh, definitely scuba diver. That was the agreed on word, and then the other ones were whale and Loch Ness that they were debating. But like they knew they wanted to go scuba diver, so it was funny because like we're waiting on Alex for like a while, I think until the next morning to post the number. But the group we kind of know is going to immediately answer scuba diver and end the thing, and that's what happened to poor Dexter.
Yeah, so then Dexter, is there. He's all ready to go to take his turn. He does it. It's immediately the black word, and it's just like that's got to feel horrible.
And the funny thing there was like I pretty quickly responded and said, unfortunately, you've hit the black word, so the assignment is over. But the group just kept talking. They did not see my reply. They were like talking about, okay, what do we guess now? So that was just a small funny thing that happened.
Yeah, they were completely blindsided by that, which is actually a little bit funny because this was unique for this game. It didn't happen the first time that we ran this. There was inherent suspicion among the spy masters from the code breakers at large right away. I think David was the first to suggest it. That like, but it kind of became like kind of group consensus that like there must be some offer that the spy masters are getting. This assignment is too simple, it's too straightforward, it's too easy. There has to be something extra going on, which no, that is not the case. This is just, most of our assignments are relatively simple, and this was just a particularly easy one where you could have earned a lot of money if you tried.
And we're able to work together.
Yes, if you're able to do the bare minimum effort, you could have earned a lot of money. And so like I think it was also David that had suggested that like the concept that like they're going to lead us to some bad words because they're going to get something out of it. So whenever we take our clues, we should do one less the maximum clue giving, which is what gives Amanda a very easy out to only guess one word for her very obvious clue. So she can take advantage of like, I can look like I'm helping the pot, but not fully help the pot by immediately like just stopping after that, because like the group's mentality is already so suspicious of every clue that's being given.
Can I give a general side note right now, Spencer? Side note, I think Amanda is crushing it so far.
Oh yeah.
It is so funny to see, and I hope that all the players can appreciate that afterward, because she is a super funny mole in my opinion so far.
I always love her side commentary.
It's so on the face of it, but still people don't recognize it as a sabotage ever.
Yeah. And then I think that was all I wanted to say about that. But then like in the overnight period between Alex giving the clue and then giving the number with the clue, we had some disturbances during the night.
Some things happened. So so Spencer and I did the write-up for this assignment, and something that we said in the first paragraph was that, the way that this assignment functions is that the spy masters can only communicate with one another in their spy master chat that we create, and then the code breakers, the rest of the group, can only communicate with each other in the code breakers chat. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Most expressly, the code breakers can't talk to the spy masters because it could break the assignment. It could literally break it. But even more than that, like, we like to set up assignments where, if this were a live game, if this were a real game, everyone would be in a group talking together. There wouldn't be like these side conversations or like side kind of gaming that happens. So we really want to create that environment where it's like, no, this is like the team acting in the moment here. instead of like coming up with like strategies with like 2 or 3 people on one side, be like, oh, we're going to play it like this, or we're going to try to get this money, or we're going to work together to make sure it fails, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of your interpretation, Spencer?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so we like doing some assignments like that. It's not all of them, but it is some where it's just fun to see the group interacting as if it were a live thing. But most people did not see that. I would say that a few did, which was nice, but we had 6 different people talk in their side chats over the course of the evening. Most, I will say, was not really about the assignment per se, but there were a few who definitely were talking a lot about the assignment. But we let it go in the moment because like we knew we were just going to penalize them. Which
Yeah.
honestly, like the penalty that they ended up getting for 6 people, breaking the rules, it ended up being $600, which, mind you, we're not that high budget of a show. $600 is not 600 literal dollars. $600 basically translates to like 60 cents that the winner will get. So it's not a big penalty in the grand schemes, but it's more of like a, hey, like this rule is in place for a reason, and just be mindful of the rules moving forward, because right now it wasn't really a big deal. But like some of our assignments, like they just would not function if people were talking in their side chats.
Yeah, yeah. And because usually like in other seasons that we've done, there is always like the very early assignment, like in the first 4, I would say, where we limit discussion and we'll get like 1, maybe 2 people that violate it. We, public shame them, call them out for it. The group lose money, and like
mild shame.
Yeah, mild shame. But like it's just kind of like a funny little thing of being like, oops, my bad. Like, $100, $200 out of the pot. So, which is always like fine, but like this time, because like the group, like so many people were doing it, we did feel the need to like write a very girthy message, essentially expressing the fact of like the purpose of like why we write the rules the way we do and how we try to be so explicit with them, and that like you should try to follow the rules because we will just keep penalizing you for it. And it's like, if no one pays attention to the rules and like just no money's ever earned from any of the assignments, and like no one's really having any fun from that. And like,
I don't want to penalize people, like that's not fine, but like I also like we plan out the season in a very meticulous way, like we're very thoughtful about it, like we just want things to function in a way that's going to be most fair, and also that it's not going to like destroy possibly some future assignments.
Yeah, so we just, instead of just like the fun little cutesy thing we normally had, we had more of a serious tone, being like, read the rules, please, which no one will take the heart, obviously. I'm sure there'll be much more just ignorance of the rules, as we had later on, that we can get to with this little twist that we had. There was some ignoring of the rules.
I still have some faith, but we'll see. But if it was one contestant from All Stars, who I love, I adore him, I can guarantee you not a single rule would ever be read. Not a single document will ever be read if they're anything like him. Ever.
Let's see here. So I think we've talked to death code names. I feel like we've covered all of our bases on that one.
I think we're good there.
So then the next thing was just kind of like this new twist that we're trying out, which I think we're going to do another time this season. Not exactly. Yeah. Do another time.
Scheduled in.
And it's we never really came up with a good name for it, so it's just called Execution Order Twist. But the whole concept is that the group will individually, after everyone's taken the test, each person is submitting a list ranking 1 being the most likely and 11 being the least likely of how likely they think each person is to be eliminated. So, yeah. And then we would take all of those lists and collate them into one master list that's like averaged all of it. And then we would go do the execution in that order. And depending on how
quickly, so like the person who the group most thinks will be executed will go first tonight in seeing their screen.
Yes. Yeah. And so then if the group got their person correct, like if the most likely person be eliminated, who the group thought was most likely to be eliminated first actually was, they would earn $2,000. The second person is like 18, and it's like 200 all the way down. Or if it's the very last person, then they get no money. But it's just this is something I've always kind of wanted to do. Like I thought of this very much on the fly, but like this kind of concept of, because on the show, like they'll have like, oh, who wants to go first or raise hands to do that. Like they can kind of like, it's easier in a live group to like do something interesting with the execution order. So I've always wanted to do something where like the group can have a little bit of say over the order of the screens appearing. So I'm very excited for this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's simple. It's a cool little thing. But yeah, everyone had to do that on their own. And then also we did say explicitly that their lists would be made public afterward, because there could be some strategy to it. You know, like if you actually want to earn money for the group and you think someone is the mole, then obviously you wouldn't put the mole on the top of your list. You'd put the mole either at the very bottom or toward the bottom, because the mole's not likely to get executed if you're right.
And
So
then there
to just see how people played that, like how they made their lists.
And it's also very funny to see where they put themselves in it, like because theoretically, like even if you're confident in your answer, you might put yourself higher up also in an attempt to like screw with the pot or just to like make yourself look shady, because also theoretically like the mole would put themselves relatively high. Maybe it's hard to actually say, but like the mole might put themselves very high because the mole wants their screen to come up, so that way the person to be eliminated is behind them, and that's more money cost.
But that's the twist. I think tonight, right now is a good time to share the executed player, even though people probably know if you've been following along. These videos aren't going to be hosted until after the season.
Yeah. So I guess we can get to the last thing I did want to say though, just because like we don't want people to get too easily information. The eliminated players list does not actually count for the execution order. That one wasn't considered, and that one won't be made public. So the group's not getting free information out of that.
Possibly game the system by like thinking, oh, that the executed player put this person at the bottom, so that's who they voted as the mole. Like
yeah, which would be wrong. The eliminated player did not put the mole at the bottom, but just like I didn't want anyone to metagame with that. So
exactly, yeah. So yeah, so Spencer, who's our executed player tonight?
It is Nick is our eliminated player.
Yeah, which was based on my pre-game thoughts. That is a bit surprising to me, a little bit. Like I did expect Nick to do better in the season, but I do think that a couple things got in his way. The relationship with Amanda definitely being one of them. Like I think very quickly like said, oh, Amanda's not the mole, just based on their relationship more than anything. And then just also his quiz strategy. But that said, you know, I said it before, Nick is someone who I've wanted to play for a very long time. So I'm glad he at least had that opportunity this season. So, you know, I'll even go on record for saying that, you know, season one, our casting process was extremely competitive. Like we got a ton of applications right away. And for that season, we cast 12 people, and Nick was literally number 13 on our list. So like I wanted to host him since then, since he didn't make that cut.
Yeah.
And we finally got to play, which I'm happy for that at least.
Even though it is tragically short.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because again, I kind of alluded to or talked about it last week with Grando. I'm doing the same thing this time, where I did take the eliminated player and like graph out their answers for every single question to see like how they scored for every person, which is really interesting to see. I don't know why I never did this for any other season. It's just pointless data that is interesting to me. But
I make the charts every season. So, you know.
This is more charts for me to make, I guess. We just love charts as the hosts.
We do.
But it was very surprising to me because the way that Nick talked about his suspicions, he was very suspicious of Brian and Alex in particular. He mentioned a lot. And then he would also kind of name check Jess and Victoria quite a bit too. So like those were his main 4 suspects. And on the test, those are the 4 people he does hit the highest. However, it's like he went very strongly on Brian, but he does actually have a good spread, a lot like how Grando, he had a better spread than Grando did the first time. He has like the lowest he has on someone who isn't the mole is 4 points, which is a really good spread actually.
That is good enough to survive if anyone else was the mole.
Yes, if literally anyone else was the mole, Nick would have survived. But on Amanda, he only had 1 answer on her. So you know, again, I don't obviously know his entire thought process. I don't know if it was just that like he was deliberately not hitting Amanda because he really didn't think she was the mole, or if it's just that how we happened to make the test, because I really don't know. There was just not a lot of overlap between Amanda and then also like Alex, Brian, Victoria, and Jessica. If those are like the main four people he was focusing on, I don't think there really was a lot of lateral overlap. But it's very kind of shocking to see, because I've never, because for other seasons I've never graphed it off like this, that like for the most part, like he did go very much all in on Brian that he could, while still keeping it spread and doing a pretty good job at that. But just like the one person that he didn't spread on ended up being the mole. So it's again this kind of lesson how important it actually is to spread thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is very risky if you start cutting people out of your suspicions. Like that could be the mole, and that could be risky. And then also just the fact that like oh shoot, what even was I gonna say? Oh, just that like with your suspicions, like if you're taking the test only focusing on a few people, you're not really cognizant of all of the other people you're hitting. So you could unintentionally score very highly or very lowly on people that you're not even considering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's a good you know, reference point to like just the importance of like spreading across the board at this point in the game, because I do still think Nick is someone who had a lot of potential, like had he made it further when there were just less suspects, but it just didn't happen when he got that far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also again to speak like with his current test, if the mole was literally any other person, he would have scored within the top 3, I think. If one of the other people's mole, his score would be the top, like for at least how for like was Amanda, like if his scores for everyone else, because I think our highest score on Amanda right now is 5.
The high, so yeah, for perspective, the highest score that anyone got on this quiz was a 5 out of 15, and not a single person has voted correctly for the mole on either quiz.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, so out of our 12-person starting cast, 10 of the 12 of them have received at least a vote as being the mole by someone. Amanda's one of only 2 people who has not had a single person vote for her so far.
Mm-hmm.
So she's crushing it. The other one being David. I'm excited to see which one holds out longer.
Yeah, I'm very curious. And it's a good thing you did mention David, because this is something else that I did want to talk about a bit with this, because it was very interesting. We did have to call attention to this with Nick and David, and a few other people, but maybe it was most strongly with like Nick and how he talked to David about the quiz, is that in our rules, we do have it written that like you cannot share how you specifically answered the test. And we didn't explicitly share it, but like it's by extension, like, so we did like do clarify this later, that like you can't sit there and talk about like, oh, I took the test and I scored a 7 on Nick, and I got a 1 on Shandy, and I got an 8 on Alex, and I got, you know, you can't like tell people your specific score breakdowns, is how we have it in our games. And there's a very specific reason for that, because it's very easy if you can get someone else to share the answers with you, which granted, like you can never know for sure if someone's sharing the answers with you, but at least in my experience, the mole it's very uncommon for people to tell unnecessary lies, really. So like if you have someone you're sharing answers with on the test, like they're going to be mostly honest with you. Like people don't really go out of their way just to like deliberately lie. So the odds that someone's lying to you isn't really that high. So if you're deliberately sharing answers like this, you can just look at like scores, even if it's just one other person, you can look at scores and very easily logic out who the mole is if you know like eliminated player scores. So for example, for this one, I did also do this for David because I was curious, because David, who did end up scoring,
were very close and we're talking about.
Yeah, they were talking about it a lot. They skirted the line. They never really crossed it, but they were like getting very close to talking like, I suspect this person a lot, I suspect this person a little, and like getting very close, but they never did have to cross it, which was good. But like David's test score, he scored a 13 on Brian. He went almost all in on Brian, but he also managed to get a 3 on Amanda. However, it is making the point again that like his lowest score on his spread was a 2, while Nick's lowest score was a 1, but on everybody else he had a higher score. So if David knows Nick's score, which Nick came very close to like talking about that, if Nick pretty much explicitly said I scored a 1 for Amanda and then like a 4 or higher on everybody else, and then David knows that his lowest score on somebody was a 2, David then pretty much would know 100% for a fact that Amanda is the mole. And that wouldn't be information
not through like his own deductions, suspicions, looking at her behavior, the game, only because of having this connection with Nick and literally knowing pure numbers.
Yeah.
Which some hosts might feel different. I always find that very problematic just because, just by the way that the game functions, it doesn't feel really fair to me or equitable. You know, especially if you factor in that this was a pre-game friendship, so it's not like, you know, in the first day they just got close immediately. Like, it's pretty clear that they were friends going into this. So like, you know, getting the level of success where you're basically guaranteed to be at the end of the game just because someone gave you their answers just doesn't feel as fair as like you being able to deduce it yourself.
Yeah, like the test is there as mean of elimination.
Go for anyone, you know, it's just a clear example we have right now.
Yeah, that's like, it's what I'm using. Like, it's not to like pick on them or anything. It is the example I'm using to like express, like, it just happened to be a very convenient example to express why we have the rules the way that we do. And shoot, what was I going to say? I was about part of it was also that, like, you know, on the show, because as much as we can, like, you know, it's very hard to convey the exact feeling of the show when, you know, we're through Facebook. But on the show, you know, if you're a contestant on there, there's no way that you can like conveniently, like, you can't screen record, you can't audio record yourself, or however taking the test. Like, you can never be 100% certain of all of the questions.
Remember all 20 questions, because it's generally 20 questions, you know, so you won't know like my definite spread of scores in a way that you can for something like this. Even if you did talk about the quiz with someone on the show, like, you can't really know to that same degree like what your spread was. Yeah.
On the show, you could never truly be 100% certain about your actual scores. So
there's something that is funny. Can I point out a funny one, Spencer?
Sure.
So after taking his quiz today, the lovely Dexter sent us a picture with like a chart work, because he was trying to track his answers and like see how they correlated to people. So on that, it showed like his scores that he would have had with everyone if they were the mole. So one of them that I noticed was for Amanda, he thought his score would be a 4. But I did see like he answered a question different than what he had it recorded as in his chart. So like even that, like even though he was like paying attention to like how he answered, he still got something wrong, right? So his score ended up being a 3. And then interestingly enough, he actually exceeded the time limit. So for our quizzes, we give people up to 10 minutes to do them. And if they go over, they get a penalty point for each minute. So we actually got a -1 for going over the time limit. So that brought him down to a 2 even.
Which was very close to being eliminated, because like Nick had a 1. So if Nick got one more right, then Dexter would have been eliminated. Like
based on time.
On time, yeah. Which again then also does call into the question about like, you know, strategy wise, like as a player in the game, like how helpful is it for you to be sharing your answers so explicitly like that with another person, and what is to actually gain out of that? Because you yourself, if I'm giving away my answers and I'm not like getting at least the same exact quality of answers in return from other people, all I'm doing is helping other people. I'm not getting anything out of that. So as a competitive standpoint, like I am putting myself at a disadvantage by giving away that information and then like the information that gets returned to me, it could be true, or someone could have screwed up like with Dexter, if I would like was sharing with Dexter and Dexter told me how he scored for Amanda and then got eliminated, I would be like, that would completely screw up my suspicions. I would metagame it and be like, oh, well, based on this list, it clearly has to be this person, be completely wrong. And then I would tank my own game. So again, instead of like letting the players just get into that weird kind of like numbers game, we just cut that off at the pass. Just don't even consider
better that. To like come up with your own like suspicions, your own observations. And certainly like it when people talk about those, like talk about your suspicions, what you're thinking, like what you notice. That's fun. And it's fun seeing people a little shady in that, but it doesn't feel as organic when people share like actual numbers. And again, no one did that yet, but it is something that we have to be mindful of.
And I think that the only other thing that happened this round is that there was just more fighting in the group about rules breaking and like who broke the rules and like money from the treasurer, which was just funny because it's more just like because there was like the group was fighting over like who violated the rules and what rules actually broke, and it was like, when we told you guys the rule was broken, we did explicitly tell you what rule it was. It was that
And
there
how
was
many
messaging
people broke it.
and how many people broke it, but no one likes to read, so it was kind of funny to like watch that happen.
And again, it's really funny, like when you put it in perspective, because I know, like, especially now, like we're in a pandemic, money is needed for things. So like people could win a little bit of money from this game. But that said, the amount of money that was won from this assignment at the start of it would have been roughly 75 cents. So like we have a whole chat of people getting in an argument about losing approximately 60 cents. So in the grand scheme of things, probably not the most important thing, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, like it was mainly Tom and Shandy were kind of like
Yeah,
going at it. I think both of them were like just trying to stir the pot.
I think so too. I think it
Which
was.
is,
I think it was a light,
which I was living for. That cracked me up a bit.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, overall, I'm still like very excited about this season. I'm still excited about this cast. We have some definite standouts, with only one assignment, certain people were able to like have more of a spark this round, but like Brian is definitely a standout. So literally half the cast are voting for him as the mole this time, which is insane.
Yeah.
Only fan favorite two-time player Wendy can also boast such a reputation. So Brian is almost in a league of his own. Yeah, and then all Shandy content has been great content so far. Oh my gosh, she has such a fun personality. I just really like her. Dexter is incredibly sweet. I love hosting him. And again, he came out of retirement. He hasn't played one of these things in several years, so that's a really cool thing. Overall, I like this cast. You, Spencer?
I love it. I'm here rooting for underdog Jessica. She didn't do as good on the test this time, but that's my dark horse to win now. We thought she'd get eliminated first, and now I just want to see her go to the end.
I could see pretty much anyone winning at this point because no one knows who it is. Adam's also great. Adam I know we didn't talk much about him tonight, but he has done some like video diaries, which are fun to watch. So I hope that trend continues. So right now, the player's mole pick is definitely Brian. I think second as of now is Victoria.
Which is kind of surprising because she just had a very quiet round. She's a lot more active the first time, but Victoria didn't, at least to me, maybe I'm missing something, but Victoria I don't think did anything shady.
She's just naturally shady, what can we say? But yeah, I think that's all I really have to say for this recap.
Yeah, I think we talked it to death like we always do.
We did have fan favorite season 3 finalist Ryan in the chat this round as our special alumni guest. That was fun. The cast has had a lot of fun just like ribbing on him a lot, which is just really great to see. I love to see that.
Warms my heart.
It really does. But Ryan is great, just a great alumni, very, very sweet person. I hope he never watches this so he doesn't hear me complimenting him.
He's definitely going to be one of our 6 fans.
Like I can't even call it a twist. It's not really a twist. It's more of just like a thing that we're doing, but it's nice to see the alumni as part of it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess that's it. So we're ready to sign off.
Yeah. So thank you, adoring fans. We will see you next time.
Bye.